Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Retro Perspective. I've been playing a little bit of Soulcalibur VI, and while this isn't going to be a review really, I definitely wanted to get my thoughts out there on it. A while ago I did a video called The Creative Bankruptcy of Modern Fighting Games, which detailed a lot of the issues that more recent fighting games have been having, especially when compared to sort of Soulcalibur 1, 2 and 3, which are so incredibly feature rich, and a lot of other fighting games were doing that back then as well, where you really felt like you got your money's worth when you were buying a fighting game. And recently it's not been going that way at all. We've been having a lot of games where it's just been arcade mode and then not much of a story, or the story has been so incredibly shallow that it's not really worth playing. But yeah, Soulcalibur VI definitely seems to be making a little baby step towards what it used to be. First I'll say that I think the combat has always been great in Soulcalibur regardless. You know, they always make little improvements to the game, and Soulcalibur VI is no exception to that. They have changed a few moves that I feel are quite iconic to the series, or characters really, and the moves are kind of like a lot more flashy than they used to be. Like there's a lot more electricity flying everywhere and stuff like that. But overall I think the changes are quite positive. All the characters have cool finishing moves now, and there's a cool new counter system where you can enter into a sort of entanglement with the opponent, and it gives you an opportunity to sort of come back from a bad situation, I guess. Sort of rubber banding in a way, which I know a lot of people don't really like, but it's not too egregious, and I feel like it makes for a lot more sort of a visually appealing fight when you can sort of be in the normal situation, and then suddenly the camera angles can come in sort of close. You get more of a variety out of the battle, I think. I don't think I really need to say it, but of course, as always, the music is brilliant. Possibly the most important feature we have now in Soulcalibur VI is the return of the world map, where you're basically playing a story with your created character this time. Usually you could just pick any character and play it, but you basically have a world map and you can go to all these different points, explore around, and you get into different fights in different locations. And there's also a leveling up system now, all these kinds of new modern elements that they brought to it. I've mentioned before that in Soulcalibur 1 and 2 there's pretty much a novel's worth of story there that you can kind of read, and these play out as you visit all these different places and find different characters. In this game it's executed a bit more clunkily than that. It's kind of a bit cheesy and a bit cliche really, in terms of the story, but it really is good that there are so many different little side quests and stuff, which obviously wasn't really a thing before, and just such a variety of stuff to do. On the other hand, Soulcalibur 2 kind of had all these different stages that introduced all these different elements to the fights. Like there were poison stages, wind stages, you had stages where you could only hurt the enemy in certain ways. I haven't really been seeing this from Soulcalibur 6. Possibly it's something that might get introduced later on in the game. I hope so. But they're kind of all just the same square platform in the end really. Although I did just mention the visual appeal of the game, I actually do think it still looks really quite dated. And I think that once again this kind of has to do with the game being Japanese, and I think that Japanese companies just have a lack of budget at the minute, or they're not willing to spend the budget on certain projects. Because while the main characters all have great designs and character models, and the stages now have shiny new depth of field and all that sort of stuff because it's on the Unreal Engine now, the creator characters and the random NPCs you come across in the main story mode look absolutely hideous. Like they look like they've been cobbled together in like 2 seconds, or just randomly generated from whatever they've got in the game, which compared to other games is not a lot of stuff. Like I mentioned, Soulcalibur 3 had possibly thousands of different items of clothing that you can put on, And the character creator in this one is like really lacking. There's barely anything you can put on really, and stuff just doesn't seem to match other stuff really. It's not really a cohesive character creator. Then there's stuff like the bandana, for instance, that just literally clips halfway across the head, rather than, you know, having it go through the hair. It's just kind of invisible at a certain point, so it just looks really bizarre basically, and so dated. And again, just like not much time or effort has been put into it. This kind of carries over to the main characters' stories, which are kind of in a visual novel style, and they all have these beautifully painted like watercolour scenes. It's all really detailed and really well done. And then the characters are shown that way as well, like before a fight. But then it kind of fades into this terrible, dated looking character model. And you just think, why did they do it like that? You know, surely they could see that comparatively that looks really jarring and awful. Namco has kind of gone back to basics, or at least gone back to the beginning in terms of the main characters' stories, and really thought about kind of the origins and the motivations of these characters. And that really, really is an effective way of doing things. And the way it's executed as well, like I just love the timeline. They show a big timeline, all the characters on the left, and all the events show up, and you can see where each character is at each moment in time. And I think that's just a great way of doing stuff, and I just love looking at the timeline and knowing that I can jump in and out of these stories and really get to know the characters more than any other Soulcalibur. And yeah, I never really thought of Yoshimitsu as a particularly interesting Soulcalibur character, but now I'm just like, yeah, that is well executed. I don't want to ruin it obviously, but there's a few other little awkward things that just make me think, you know, this game was rushed, or have they forgotten how to make games properly? Like, when you're in your created character story, to progress the text, you have to press square. But then when you select things, you have to press X, and I just think, why not just make it X the whole time? Like, there's no reason for any of these decisions, really. I mean, I hate pressing a button every time you have to progress text anyway, but at least make it one button. Again, back to the character creator. When you're trying to equip clothes to your character, you can't preview the clothes just by hovering over the item that you want. You have to actually equip the item of clothing to be able to see it at all, and I just think that's a really clunky way of doing things that could easily be rectified. Despite locking out certain characters with extra purchases, which obviously is horrendous and should never happen in a fighting game, I can really tell that compared to Soulcalibur IV, where they clearly didn't try at all, they really did try and make a decent Soulcalibur game with Soulcalibur VI, and I'm definitely looking forward to playing more of it. But again, this is still only baby steps really back towards what we used to have all the way back on the Dreamcast with Soulcalibur 1, and I definitely don't feel as if they're trying to modernise this in any way. I think they really are just kind of taking the time and thinking, okay, can we push a little further, can we add a bit more budget? But again, I think that's probably just indicative of the Japanese game industry as a whole really. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, hope you enjoyed it. Do check out the creative bankruptcy of modern fighting games. It goes into a lot more detail of the differences between then and now on stuff like Soulcalibur and other fighting games as well. Cheers, and I'll see you next time.